Amy, could you do the housekeeping rules, please?
Yes, Chairman, no problem at all. May I remind everybody present that the meeting will be live streamed and recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hands up by using the raise hand function? And please could all committee members ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function is available to you this evening to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of Councillor Charles as Chair or myself as a Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then please could they let the Chair or Democratic Officer know. If you have a webcam, then please could you try turning this off in the first instance, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so you can at least be heard in order to highlight any technical issues. Thank you, Chair. That concludes the housekeeping script this evening.
Thank you, Amy. Welcome to the meeting, everyone. Thank you for attending. Our main objective today is to know the committee and what our job is. You will get an opportunity to ask questions as well. So if we could move directly on to agenda item 1, which is the appointment of a vice chair. Do we have any nominations? I can't see anybody's hand up. Yes, Susan Lloyd-Selby.
Thank you, Chair. Can I nominate Councillor Neil Thomas, please?
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I would like to second.
And you are, sorry, I can't see you.
Julie Lynch-Wilson.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations? No, thank you. Well, congratulations, Neil. And I look forward to working with you again. I'm sure we make another great team.
Thanks,
Chairman, sorry, just for the sake
all.
of the recording, do you mind if I check there is no dissent from the committee with regards to the nominations?
Oh, certainly, yes. Do we have any dissent? Anybody that doesn't accept Councillor Neil Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. There's no indication, so the nomination follows.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 2, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Collins.
Thank you very much. Any more apologies for absence? Nobody? Thank you. Moving on to then agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of March 2022. And as there was only myself and Councillor Neil Thomas, can confirm. Yes, we confirm the minutes. Thank you, Neil. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is to receive the declaration of interest, including whipping declarations. Any member needing or seeking advice on this, I'm sure will have done this 48 hours before. Yes, Helen. Sorry, Councillor Payne.
Can I declare on item 6? Hello, hiya, how are you? Good. Can I declare on item 6, please?
Yeah.
I have a personal interest as I have a family member who has a care package, but having looked at the item, the interest is not prejudicial.
Thank you. I think it's just a report anyway to indicate the situation and the difficulties we face at the moment. Thank you. Moving on then to agenda item 5, which is the presentation and introduction of the Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee. It's all about staffing structures and key issues. A good introduction to this for everybody that is new. And I believe you, Lance, are going to do this. Hello, Lance.
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Thank you, Lance.
Should be simply, I think. Okay, and I should start off by saying welcome and also alerting you, I suppose, that that two of my colleagues are unable to make it this evening, and they would almost always be here. It's unfortunate they can't be at the moment. So that's Amanda Phillips, who is the Head of Resource Management and Safeguarding, and Rachel Evans, who is Head of Children and Young People's Services. So that will make a bit of sense, a bit more when I will mention it again as we get further through the presentation. So it's broadly split up into two sections. The first one being really about I suppose the more corporate sense of committees and how they fit within the overall structure, and the second half being more detail, really, I suppose, about the structures of not just social services but also the leisure service, which this committee obviously covers. So I will go through it. Happy to take any questions. Probably best to do that at the end. Obviously, that's at the chair's discretion. So I just tried to thank you, Amy, for moving it forward. So the council's vision is to have strong communities with a bright future. I'm sure none of us would argue with that. And you know, I think the bits that sit underneath it with those nice colour graphics are really kind of the key planks that we have put in place to try and achieve that broader vision. I'm not just going to read out the words, you'll be relieved to know, but we do group and shape our objectives underneath those four items. So if you wouldn't mind bringing the next slide up, please, Amy. Our vision and outcomes link to and contribute to the Wellbeing Goals for Wales, which are part of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and the work we do, and obviously how members make decisions and scrutinise those decisions is enhanced by that act, using the 5 ways of workings as a lens through which to consider different topics. And you'll notice that through the format of the reports that you receive, there will be specific reference to those 5 ways of working. Amy, would you mind going on again, please? So it probably wouldn't surprise you that these things don't happen by themselves, and so we have had in place a 5-year corporate plan, and that sets out our commitments to improve well-being and guides really how we use and direct our resources. The corporate plan is purposefully cross-cutting. It's not just divided up into the directorates, although clearly each service area contributes in some way, and some elements of the corporate plan will be far more relevant to this committee than others. But clearly we want you to be involved. We want to let you know about our work. We want to seek your involvement, to have your influence in terms of the way we operate going forward. And inevitably, there will be components of that you would expect, things like having a really good customer service, having services that are very accessible to people regardless of what language they speak, and particularly Welsh. And we also want all of our staff and members alike to be able to do their best. And I think in terms of probably objective 2, we're talking there about making sure children have the opportunity to learn in modern, good environments. We want to give people and businesses support, advice and opportunities to help with jobs, money and skills. And we want to help people to volunteer. And we want to make the Vale a better place to live and work. And then in terms of objective 3, which you'll probably find a lot of the work of this committee falling under, that's very much about trying to encourage people to have a healthy and active lifestyle, encourage walking and cycling, and that's why leisure is a very key part of this committee. It can often be seen as a social services committee. It's not just that. It is deliberately broad for this reason, and we want, I suppose, everybody to have the opportunity to enjoy those facilities in our communities. We also, I would be remiss of me not to talk about social services, but we want to make sure that people get the care and support that they need, and we want, as far as possible, to keep people safe at home in their communities and to have good access to quality housing. And in terms of objective 4, that's very much about how we look after and protect our environment, but and work with others to sustain our local facilities, things like public toilets, parks and play areas. And also, I suppose, those things that we need to do in terms of tackling the environmental challenge, so reducing waste, lowering carbon emissions, and minimising the negative impact on the environment. So I suppose the commitments for the 5 years, they're articulated in an annual delivery plan each year. That's often shortened to ADP. So if you hear that acronym, that's what it means. And there are 6 themes there on the right hand side of that show you where the particular emphasis is being given. And you will get through the committee performance reports quarterly, which will describe the areas that relate to this committee in terms of progress against that performance. So it's cross-cutting. Some things do slip into other committees' remits and so on. We would expect that, but I suppose there's also a need for us to try and focus on the areas that are particular to this committee. So if you could move on to the next one, please, Amy. And so I suppose getting into that in terms of delivering our vision, we want to make sure that there's a connection between services and wellbeing, that we look through the lens of those wellbeing outcomes, and that those outcomes essentially form a bridge between the collection of services that we have working in different combinations to deliver those corporate plan commitments. So this committee's wellbeing outcome is to see an active and healthy Vale, and to make sure that residents of the Vale of Glamorgan lead healthy lives and vulnerable people are protected and supported. Yeah, I think the next one, please. Sorry, it also shows you the services there on the right hand side in terms that you would expect to come within the remit of this committee. If you could move on to the next one. In order to make the connection between service and wellbeing, each committee considers those items. Oh, sorry, I'm repeating myself. I've got the wrong note in front of me. So sorry, this is for homes and safe communities. So just quickly, I'm not going to dwell on these other committees, but to give you an idea of the bits that they are considering, so that you know to avoid, I suppose, some of that duplication and overlap. But for them, in terms of homes and safe committees, that's very much about seeing an inclusive and safe Vale, and to ensure that people have a good quality of life and feel part of their community. In terms of the next one, I just need to make sure. So if you could skip to the next one, please. Thank you. So in terms of that committee, so environment and regeneration, that's outcomes are very much about environmentally responsible and prosperous Vale, meaning that the Vale of Glamorgan has a strong and sustainable economy, and the local environment is safeguarded for present and future generations. So that will be their focus. And then moving on to the next one, which is Learning and Culture Committee. That one, the wellbeing outcome is about having an aspirational and culturally vibrant Vale, and that being that I suppose all Vale of Glamorgan citizens should have the opportunities to achieve their full potential. And I think lastly is Corporate Performance and Resources Committee, which has a bit of an overlap between them all, because obviously resources are important to us all, but their role is to ensure the overall delivery of the corporate plan objectives and those well-being outcomes. So I'm just going to pause for a second. So that really was the kind of broader element of the presentation. I think what I'm going to try and do now is get into a bit more of the detail about the kind of scope of the services that are covered within this committee. It was really tempting to bring you a massive long presentation going through exactly what every single team does and so on, but I knew it would probably be a bit overwhelming, And I'm also aware from a social services point of view that the director's report, which is a key report for us, that is an annual report that covers the whole service, is going to be coming, I think, to the next committee meeting. So I didn't want to end up repeating that. So in terms of the format for this, we've focused it very much on the structures, so that you can see how we're organised, and then if you need to navigate and find a particular service, you will be able to do that more easily. I thought that was probably a better way just to do it today. But if you have questions about what team does what and how we operate, then that's probably better for the following meeting. So for social services, and Dave will come in for leisure services shortly, but for social services there are three departments or divisions, and as it says there is overlap between all three of them. Children and young people have this habit of getting older and becoming adults, so inevitably we have a transition to manage, and the resource management and safeguarding element covers all age groups. So if you could move to the next slide, please, Amy. Which, if I remember rightly, is a very complicated looking one. And yes, that's the one. I appreciate there's a lot of detail in here, but I thought it was important that you saw the full scale of the services that we provide in terms of the different teams and how they operate. This one's quite interesting, and I refer you to the key in the bottom right hand corner, which refers to the different colours, recognising how integrated some of our services are. Some of our services are now fully integrated. Posts are completely integrated, operating both for health and social care. Others are probably more traditional and run by the respective organisations. You'll also see the purple elements more towards the right hand side. So those are health services. Because we are trying to deal with things as together as possible, it seemed to make sense that you saw the whole lot. And for a lot of people, they won't know for sure which bit they need to see and when, and so we try to take some of that away in terms of how we deal with our intake into the service. So I wasn't planning to go through the detail of all the teams. There are mental health teams, there are learning disability teams, other teams dealing with older people, day services, and so on. And I think probably what I would say to you, if you need to contact anybody in the service, either come to myself or Suzanne Clifton as Head of Adult Services, and we will navigate it for you. That's probably the right way should a query come up for you. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. So in terms of the overview, as I said, I wasn't going to go through team by team, but you get a flavour for the 6 kind of areas that we have in terms of the locality services. Learning disability services are provided in partnership with Swansea Bay University Health Board rather than Cardiff and Vale, and our community mental health teams are probably more, as you would expect, provided with Cardiff in partnership with Cardiff and Vale. We also operate substance misuse services in the same way with them. So I think that's it for adults. So as I said earlier, if Rachel Evans was here, she'd be waving furiously and probably wanting to present this element to describe her service. I'm sorry she isn't able to be here tonight, but she would be the person that you would go to. In terms of this structure, it's less complex in that there isn't the volume of health services in here, but I would draw your attention to the box on the left hand side, which is the Vale Valleys and Cardiff Regional Adoption Collaborative, because we are the lead authority for service that operates across 4 local authorities in relation to adoption. So it's not that we assume their responsibilities, but we are the lead provider. This structure also, I should let you know, we have just managed to find resources to split this structure into what you see here. We've operated with just 2 operational managers up until very recently. It was really tempting to put the as-is model for you, but I thought hopefully in the next month or so we'll have recruited to that and these structural changes would happen. I didn't want to confuse you with lots of different slides. So you'll see it's split there into early help and prevention, family support, and children looked after. If you could move to the next slide, please. And again, I'm not going to go through the list here, but I probably will draw out some bits. The intake team is where the child protection referrals and so on will come in and be managed. Our Flying Start service is a Welsh government funded service, which we provide to in particular areas of the Vale of Glamorgan to really help those who have less opportunities have a much better start in life. You will get a copy of this presentation, so I'm happy to leave this with you. Amy, would you mind moving on, please? Again, more detail about the different teams, and I suppose the other bit I should probably pull out from here is the youth offending service, which is managed through social services, but this covers really a lot of elements of the council. So as you can imagine, the Safer Vale structures, where we're obviously trying to reduce offending activity in the whole, it's a key element of that. Key elements in education and so on as well. So I think if you could move on to the next one, please, Amy. So next one, as I said, Amanda Phillips would be here. Unfortunately, she's unable to be here this evening. And again, I suppose split recent additional operational management capacity, recognising that the demand for social care has gone up and up and up over many years, and we've been trying to manage that demand through grant funding and changes in models, but that only does so much, and our management team, particularly on the back of 2 years of the pandemic, needed to be strengthened. So we have added additional operational management capacity, which has recently started, and so this reflects that new change. So we provide our own residential services. So we have 4 care homes there listed on the left-hand side. We also have a safeguarding role, clearly, and that operates across adults and children's services. There's huge amounts of work in terms of finance and commissioning. I think that's probably borne out in one of the reports that's on the committee this evening. So I won't dwell on that. And the other bit really relates to lots of the improvements we need to make in terms of our, I suppose, business intelligence and understanding what we are dealing with. So if you can move on, please, Amy. So I probably covered most of what's in there already. I can't stress enough how key safeguarding is to everything that you will see in here as part of this committee. It runs through everything, and so you will also see corporate safeguarding reports come through this committee. It'll go through also to other committees, but there'll be something that you will almost certainly want to particularly focus in on. The next one, please. So in terms of challenges for social care, some of these are actually on the agenda this evening, in terms of probably those 2, in terms of demand management for adults and the fragility of the independent provider market. They are on the agenda to some extent in terms of the commissioning report, but they're, in terms of children's services, we have seen significant growth in demand. Predominantly, the effect of lockdown seems to have had a seismic shift on children and young people, and we are feeling that in terms of how our services respond. and inevitably that has, it says their capacity, sufficiency of staff to deliver. We can't simply meet that demand with the current staff that we have, and this is coming at a time where, and again you'll see this as a feature of the other report, where there aren't the staff around to do the work. People have made decisions to retire wherever they were able to. There aren't people here to replace them and do that work. Because I think that's going to be a feature of the later report. I'm not going to dwell on that now, but I just wanted to draw your attention that that isn't just about adults, and the report is about adults. I think the demographics you probably would be aware of. We have a rising population of older people in the Vale, significant numbers, growing numbers of older people, and what comes with that, particularly for those who are probably over 85, is a need to provide care and support, and so that presents us with a challenge. And I think, probably what's also coming is that people expect more. People expect to have control. People expect the services to arrive the next day. We're all used to certain online providers who can turn up the following day, and people expect those kind of response times. I think when I started in social care, I look back at the legislation and think it was remarkably simple compared to what it is now. Layer upon layer of legislation has made it very, very complicated. The work of a social worker now is almost as a quasi-legal professional in terms of the level of legal complexity that they need to deal with on a daily basis. I think I also need to point out that the position of Welsh Government is also complicated in terms of what should be delivered on a local basis. And when I say local, I normally mean the local authority basis. So for the whole of the Vale, what they want to happen on a kind of smaller basis, so almost on a local neighbourhood basis, and also what they want us to do regionally through our partners, Cardiff and Vale Health Board. So I suppose that complexity is something that we're having to navigate all the time. Budget pressures kind of go without saying, and that will come up as work of this committee going forward. So can I have the next slide, please, Amy? So the priorities really fall out of those key challenges. Probably won't be particularly surprising. Workforce is probably our biggest priority at the moment because of the challenges that I've just described. You will see that, I suppose, within that we have a number of approaches that are to help with the workforce, help, I suppose, in terms of how good we are at protecting our communities and safeguarding, which are things like providing really outcome-focused services and actually working really closely with our health services, getting in early and so on. All of those things help us to do that. But that is in the context of difficulties with the markets, difficulties maintaining and monitoring our performance, and to give you an example of what that market stability problems will look like, and I'm sorry, Councillor Charles and Councillor Thomas, because I know you had reports on this last year, but we had 3 residential care homes close in the Vale of Glamorgan last year, not for financial reasons, some of them because of issues with a real difficulty to maintain the quality, and others simply because they didn't want to do the business anymore and decided to close. So we have to keep a really close eye on those, because although we purchase all of those things in the market, the local authority is responsible for whether there is sufficient care available to meet that level of demand, and managing that kind of difficulty of services that are provided independently, and yet all the responsibility sitting with us to make sure that they are operating safely and are available is something that we are going to see and continue to see as a significant issue. So I think the next slide will bring us on to leisure services. And I would say I would talk to this, but I'm hoping, Dave, you're okay to talk to this because I think you probably know it better than I do. So I'll hand over quickly for this bit to Dave, if that's okay.
Thank you, Lance. That was very comprehensive. Thank you very much. From a leisure services perspective, you can see our structure in front of you there. Just to give you a sort of brief description of what we do and how that fits. Our leisure centres, as most of you will be aware, are now out to contract. We have a not-for-profit organisation by the name of Legacy Leisure that operate our facilities on our behalf. And I do stress on our behalf, as they are very much council-owned facilities that wouldn't exist without the local authority. Since Legacy Leisure took over the management of the facilities, they've increased usage by 25% since 2012. We now have approximately, or did have prior to COVID, approximately 800,000 paying visits to our facilities on an annual basis. We're the only local authority in Wales that had a contract that was actually generating a revenue surplus to the local authority, so not requiring a public subsidy to actually operate in terms of its operating costs on an annual basis. Obviously, COVID had somewhat changed that picture, but we are in a process of recovery. We are in a process of renegotiating the contract with Legacy Leisure at the moment, and I will speak a little bit about that again shortly. We've got a sport and play section, which is our sports development team, which is very much about promoting physical well-being and creating physical activity opportunities. Again, building on what has happened with the pandemic and COVID, being fit and healthy was obviously one of the big defences against COVID, and very much one of the objectives of this particular scrutiny committee, as Lance touched upon earlier, in terms of providing opportunities for people to develop healthier lifestyles, and our team are very much heavily involved in that. Our exercise referral team, which is based within the leisure centre but is operated by the local authority and receives funding from Welsh Government, is an alternative in terms of prescriptions from doctors in terms of what can make a difference to healthy lifestyles. So instead of being prescribed drugs or whatever, your doctor may prescribe an exercise regime to yourself, and our exercise referral professionals in our leisure centre can assist with that. We're also responsible for 22 community centres that are spread throughout the Vale of Glamorgan, and some of you may well be asked in the next couple of months to be actively involved in the voluntary management committees that operate those particular community centres and play an invaluable role on a very, very local basis. Missing from this particular slide, because I don't directly manage the section, is the Parks and Open Spaces department. I am the conduit for that as far as this committee is concerned. If there are queries relating to our town parks, our public open spaces and our playgrounds, I can assist in that way. If we can move on, Amy, to the next slide. Just giving an overview in terms of what I've touched upon there. Trees is always a popular issue that comes through, and obviously with ash dieback affecting much of the council's stock of trees at the moment, I know it's a particularly keen subject, and if councillors have got queries, obviously we're more than happy to try to answer those. What I would stress is it is about providing opportunities in terms of our area of work. It is in terms of working with as many external organisations as possible, providing support and building active partnerships. We are also reliant on a lot of grant funding, particularly within our sports development team, and work actively with a number of partners, notably Sport Wales, in terms of the opportunities that can be developed. Amy, next slide. Again, there's a little bit more information that you'll be able to read at your leisure in terms of exercise referral and community centres. Amy, again, moving on. Much as Lance has done, sort of identifying our priorities to give you a flavour of what we are going to be looking at over the next 5 years. Increasing physical activity levels across the Vale of Glamorgan. We do undertake with Sport Wales annual surveys to see where we are. I'm delighted to say that traditionally we have been ranked quite highly in terms of physical activity levels, but there is always room for improvement, and we're working on that. I've touched upon the leisure management contract and the need to extend that, which we're working on and hope to announce very, very shortly. We're also aware of the financial difficulties that Lance touched upon, and we have got opportunities in our areas that not many other areas have in terms of generating finance. And you will see more opportunities arise in our town parks, etc. We've got some exciting concessions going into those. Some PNAF members will be aware of developments in Windsor Park in terms of the ice cream parlour. That is the start of a process of whereby looking at the commercial opportunities that some of our parks do actually present to us. We're also looking at further efficiency subjects. You'll see in the box at the bottom single use provision. We do subsidise a number of clubs in the Vale of Glamorgan who operate basically facilities to their own ends, and obviously we are in the process of looking at better self-management models for those sort of facilities. And one of the success stories over the last few years has been the transfer of bowling greens to the bowls clubs themselves, with the restrictions that they must be open access facilities to members of the public. Touching upon our town parks again, we have a high number of Green Flag awards, which is a quality mark in terms of the facilities we actually provide. We have got a leisure strategy, which we're currently in the process of reviewing. We do a number of summer play schemes and school holiday play schemes, and have been very fortunate to have funding from Welsh Government for a Winter of Wellbeing programme and also a Summer of Fun programme. And again, they will extend this year. What I would say to members, anybody that wants to visit any of our facilities or see any of our schemes, you're more than welcome to do so. You're more than welcome to approach me in that respect, or you're more than welcome just to turn up. We do welcome that at any time. If we could move on, Amy, next slide. Again, I think as Lance sort of said, the challenges sort of lead on from the previous slide. And much of the same is probably as what you would expect to see here. You've got the developing meaningful partnerships. We have got an ageing workforce, particularly in our parks department, which is going to be a challenge moving forward. We want to ensure that the provision that we've got at some of our larger centres or leisure centres at PNAF and Barry, we've got a more of a quality of service in terms of what we're providing at some of our smaller centres at Lantwit and Cowbridge, so everybody has the same opportunities to develop healthier lifestyles. We're very aware that we live very much in terms of customer expectations. We're very fortunate that we've had major investment into some of our leisure provision recently, and again, I think they're now extremely impressive facilities. I think the financial success I spoke about in terms of our leisure centres couldn't be achieved without a quality mark as well. And I happen to think that our quality is equal to anything else that you will find in Wales in terms of public leisure provision. Indeed, I think when you walk into some of our facilities, we're exceeding what you would expect to find in the private sector, with the exception that everything that we provide is available to all. And we're particularly proud of that particular circumstance. As I say, we're open to questions. We're always open to challenge, and obviously, as part of your role as members, we would expect to be challenged and asked what we are doing, and we clearly welcome that. The final thing probably to add is we do have a leisure centre working group traditionally as part of this committee, and in due course we will look to re-establish that and for members to take an active role in terms of how we plan the service and how we actually move forward. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. A very comprehensive report from both of you. It is for information only, and I do believe there is given us quite a guide into what services you do provide. However, we will be getting more reports through on individual departments. But meanwhile, does anybody have any questions at this stage that they would like to ask, either Dave or Lance? I can't see any hands. Nobody. Thank you very much. Then we will move on to agenda item 7. This report is about what has been done over the last 12 months. And I'm pleased to say I feel this is a good report with a good news story. And it's nice to see there are no slippages. So, Becky, yeah.
Agenda item 6 first.
Oh, I am sorry. The annual review of Commission services to adults with a care and support need. Lance, you're a very busy man this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. I wish the introduction that you gave about the family
me
information
too.
service
Me
applied
too.
because unfortunately this isn't good news. But I think you know we've it's something that I know Councillor Charles and Councillor Thomas you are aware of because we have brought previous reports, but I think this is an area that we are really struggling in, and it seemed right that we brought it to this committee and that you understood the scale of the difficulties that we are currently experiencing. And I suppose so. I suppose in terms of summarising the report, I would first say, as I said earlier, I'm sorry Amanda Phillips isn't here, but her colleague Gaynor Jones is here, who is our commissioning lead operational manager, and so I'm hopeful that between her and myself that we would be able to answer any questions that you may have. But I suppose principally what the report highlights is difficulties in relation to commissioning domiciliary care in particular. And the reasons behind that are regarding an insufficiency of care staff who are, or people, I guess, who are willing to work for and provide care currently, and that is resulting in a significant size waiting list of people who we have assessed as needing care. So Suzanne's service, who do the operational or provide the operational assessments for whether people need care and how much care and what sort of care and so on, they will have completed those assessments, and they will have said that, for example, that an individual might need 20 hours of care a week, and we are struggling to be able to meet those needs and provide them with that care. I can give you some assurance that we have done a huge amount of work in trying to resolve this. I can also tell you that we are not alone. This is an issue that is affecting the entirety of the United Kingdom. I understand certainly the whole of Wales, and so there are far broader reasons as to why this problem exists. Also with it, and as I referred to earlier, there have been issues with care homes, particularly probably affected by COVID. And what we saw during COVID was a reduction in the usage of care homes. We also saw a number of people unfortunately pass away who lived in care homes, resulting in for older people's care homes a large number of vacancies, and a funding package was put in place, and so on. So those closures weren't about funding, but they were about, I think, people reaching a stage that they didn't want to provide that business anymore, in some cases. And there were also one, I think, out of the three where we had some concerns about the quality of the service that they were providing, and we were actively working with the provider, not with it wasn't a decision we made to close them, but that they decided to withdraw from the market because they didn't feel they were able to fulfill those quality expectations. So as you can imagine, something this serious has meant that we've had to be proactive in terms of the care homes. There is a market position statement attached, which is a piece of work that we commissioned, which probably didn't tell us anything we didn't know, but it is succinct and it's all in one place, and informs what we need to do next in return in terms of those care homes. The one thing I probably need to draw to your attention is that those providers, domiciliary care providers, and residential nursing care home providers have, throughout the entirety of the pandemic and since, consistently reported how grateful they are to the high levels of support that they have had from our commissioning team. And Gaynor will probably blush now, but in particularly Gaynor and how her and her team have responded to the issues that they have raised. It's been an incredibly testing period for us all, and throughout that time we have seen changes in guidance, sometimes every few weeks, in relation to whether that's isolation, whether that's infection control, whether that's who can go in, when they can go in, what tests they need, whether the staff need this test, what day they need it. It goes on and on and on, and I can't understate how challenging that has been. And I think, if I'm honest, that has been a key, has probably what's had this most significant impact in terms of where we are at the moment. I've spoken to care home providers who have said to me, I used to be able to provide care and oversee the quality of care, and now all I do is coordinate testing and change shift patterns because my staff are isolating. I don't think that's unusual. I know that providing for care homes ourselves means that we have had similar experiences, and it's been extremely difficult. I think there are some real positives. We have, throughout that time, managed to mitigate some of this position. We have developed things like the fast track to care system, which is entice people into working with us. We have run drop-ins for people who may be interested in working with us. We've worked, as I've said, really positively with our providers. We have a new care home contract, so our providers are really clear about what's expected of them. We've fortunately, through a really good funding settlement from Welsh Government, we're able at our last funding increase, which happened from April, to provide a sizable increase in funding to those providers. I don't think it keeps pace with the kind of salaries that are also our competitors. And I guess when I'm saying our competitors, supermarket chains, coffee shops and so on, are all competing for the same groups of staff, and we are still struggling to compete with them. I think you will see, and I probably need to draw your attention to it, but the care home occupancy is closer to what it was in terms of percentages, at recognising that there are less care homes. So we aren't dealing with the substantial numbers of voids that we once were. And as I said, the Welsh Government's commitment to the real living wage has proved very positive. But that's only April, and I'm yet to see a seismic shift in terms of staffing who are coming to work for us as a result. We've also, in the Vale, and again, an excellent piece of work that Gaynor and a colleague in Suzanne's service, Andy Cole, developed, which was our Your Choice programme, which was a way of delivering domiciliary care that is a bit different, and it gives a lot more control to the individual receiving the care, so they can choose how that care is provided and when, and that it's much better for people working in care. They prefer it because they'd rather be working to the needs of that individual, rather than based on a social work assessment that happened at the time that first individual needed care. So again, some real positives. And as I said, we have weekly action meetings looking at what else we can do with regards to the waits that are being experienced, and prioritising those people who are waiting for care. So that can be really difficult in certain circumstances, particularly in the most rural parts of the Western Vale. That is really challenging. So, and I probably I haven't said it, but we're also having increased demand as well. So all of those things have come together at once. I'm confident that the director I work for is responding to the most it possibly could in terms of what it's doing. Other parts of Wales are asking us what we're doing. I think I'm seeing some really, really good cutting edge developmental work happening through that. So I feel confident about that. However, I cannot sit here and pretend to you that everything is okay and there isn't a significant sized group of people waiting for care, because there is, and I needed to make sure that you were aware of this, because it's not something I've encountered in my entire career. So I will stop there, and then I'll be happy to take any questions or hand them to Gaynor if I can't answer them.
Thank you very much, Lance. I know that you didn't want to prepare a report like this, but I'm sure I can speak on behalf of Neil and I, who have been with you for rather a long time and seen how hard you have worked at trying to make this as good as it can be, along with your staff that went during COVID over and above what they were expected to do. And so I thank you, and let's just hope that with all the goodwill in the world, we can perhaps make it better. And I do realise and understand that we are doing a lot better than any other authority is at the moment. So thank you. Would you like to say anything, Gaynor? No? Okay. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask at this stage?
There's a couple of hands up, Chair. Mine and Susan Lloyd-Selby.
Okay. Susan, would you?
Susan first.
Yeah. Would you like to go first, Susan?
Yeah, thank you, Lance, for providing such a comprehensive report. As a new councillor and new member of this committee, I think it's given a really good snapshot of some of the pressures that the department has been facing and is currently facing. I'd be really grateful if you could just provide some clarification and update on a couple of issues within the report, if that's okay. So first of all, the report references the impact of the requirement for staff to isolate within services. And you mentioned how complex things have been through the pandemic with the regulation that's constantly changing. So does that requirement still exist within the service, or has it ended? And if it's ended, are you seeing or hearing any reports that that's easing things, or is it too soon to say?
Sorry, the isolation requirements haven't completely gone away. So there is particular guidance for health and social care staff, and particularly those working in domiciliary care. I could share a link to that guidance, but it does require people to isolate still. The one thing that that was apparent, and I think this happened, if I've got this right, sorry, my COVID memory appears to have blurred various things over the last 2 years, but I think it was in November where they shifted from 7 days to 5 days, or it could have been from 14 to 7. I can't remember which way around it, but we saw a significant difference. We saw a kind of leap at that point. It really, really helped. But yeah, there are still isolation requirements. There are still infection control requirements. So it hasn't entirely gone away. But yeah, so it is an issue, I'm afraid, still.
Yeah, thank you. And then the report, you mentioned the number of people who are waiting for domiciliary care services, and within the report, that was 68. And obviously I'm aware that things are fast moving. So has that situation improved or got worse in terms of the number of people who've been assessed as needing care but are still waiting for it?
I am sorry to say it has deteriorated, and so the current position is around 90 people who are waiting for care, and I think we see weekly variation, and I think so some of that, you know, could be that, but I think when I look at the figures, we monitor it weekly, as I said, through the call to action meeting, and there's been a deterioration over the last 3 weeks to around the 90 mark. So it's gone up and down, but around the 90 mark over the last 3 weeks, and that coincided with and Gaynor may have a bit more detail if you want it, but with an agency handing back care packages. So when we've commissioned care from a domiciliary care agency, they can still tell us we no longer are able or want to provide care for this group of residents. And I think in this circumstance, it was that they were choosing to concentrate their business in another local authority area. They covered multiple local authority areas and decided to concentrate their business. In fairness, when that has happened, it's been because they can't recruit staff or maintain the numbers of staff themselves. So they're not doing it out of maliciousness or anything like that. It's their inability to be able to meet the demand themselves.
Thank you. Finally, if I may, can I just one more issue. So I note in the report it talks about the fact that the council has an ongoing programme to recommission social care services, and I'm conscious that that in itself can be disruptive in terms of sustainability and resilience within the market. So just briefly, it'd be helpful to understand, is that an automatic recommissioning of services after a number of years, or is it based upon provider performance?
I'll ask Gaynor to come in a minute, because I think it might be helpful if Gaynor, if you could describe which ones are coming next. But we certain services like domiciliary care and residential care, we kind of commission for that individual, and there isn't a requirement, I suppose, to recommission unless something goes wrong or that provider can't continue. So if you get your domiciliary care from All Care and we've commissioned it from All Care, then it just stays in place until that individual's needs change, or if All Care, for example, said they couldn't provide it. With something like supported living accommodation, which I think is the example given in the report, and supported living accommodation tends to be group sort of homes where a supported living provider supports probably a group of anything up to 4 or 5 adults with learning disabilities or physical disabilities. We are required to commission and go through a tendering exercise for that, and when we do that, we are limited in the number of years that we can award those contracts. So we will award a contract for 5 years, for example, and then what you'll find is in 4.5 years' time, Gaynor will say, oh, we've got probably 4 years' time, say we've got to recommission this next year, and then we will go through that tendering process, and that can be disruptive for the individuals receiving care because their provider may change. It can also result in lots of improvements, if I'm honest, as well. And we've seen lots of indications of that with our recent supported living retender. Lots of concern and anxiety before the process, as you would expect, as people are worried that their provider and the people they know will change, but actually lots of really positive feedback because of how the process worked and who their new providers are. But I think it might be helpful if I hand over to Gaynor there to ask Gaynor whether you have off the top of your head the list of provision that we're commissioning next.
So over the next 12 months, there are 3 contracts that will definitely be recommissioned. That's advocacy, both for children and young people and for adults. And our largest contract with Children and Young People Services, which is for support services. So that covers family support, our contact service, and children with disabilities respite service in Robbins Lane in Barry. We have 2 further contracts that have come to the end, or will be coming to the end of their original contract period, but they have an extension period built into them as well. Which we'll be asking, we'll be doing a full review of those on top of our usual monitoring meetings with the providers, and putting to Lance a recommendation as to whether that option to extend is taken up or not. At this moment in time, I have no reason to say that we wouldn't be recommending those extensions are taken up. And then we've got another 2 procurement processes that we are currently working through that will happen in the next 12 months, and these are brand new services. So one is the accelerated cluster model down in the Western Vale. where we'll be looking for one or a number of domiciliary providers to assist us with that service. And as of this afternoon as well, we're going to be working on the expansion to the Fly and Start services, and we'll be assisting colleagues in Fly and Start with that.
Thank you, Sue. I would have been very surprised if nobody had asked those questions. Councillor Neil Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, yeah, I'd like to associate myself with the comments that you made at the beginning about the work that they've been doing over the last couple of years under COVID, and particularly thanks to the officers that redeployed from desk jobs, I guess, to frontline services in order to support the needs of the council and the residents. I mean, there has been an outflow of individuals from the service, people leaving who were previously employed as care workers in either domiciliary or residential. And truth be told, part of that is the outflow of people from the UK as a consequence of Brexit. But I mean that's something we're going to have to learn to live with, and perhaps new ways of finding new staff. I mean, I know you've been fishing for new people with all the work, drop-in shops and all the rest of it that you've been trying to recruit through. What's happening? Part of the whole package that we do offer is daycare services as well for some people, and that can help take some of the pressure off the care providers and the need for more care by bringing people into some of the daycare centres. I'm just wondering how that is progressing and what's going on with that, because I know that's all that had to stop pretty much during COVID, and where we are now, please. Thank you.
We have recommenced services. I'm hoping Suzanne would be able to respond to that, because I think she'd probably be able to put a bit more detail in terms of what's open where. Suzanne?
Thanks, Lance, and thanks, Councillor Thomas. And so yes, you're correct. Day services did resume. I'm trying to, again, I'm struggling in terms of actual timelines, the same as Lance was referring to previously as to exactly when things reopened. Of course, when we first reopened, it was on a reduced number of individuals, and of course all the infection prevention control and regulations that applied to care homes and the health and social care sector also applied stringently to our day services. With the relaxation of some of those regulations in recent weeks, we have been able to consider and revisit our risk assessments to look to see how we can extend the number of individuals that we can support. However, our day services are in a similar scenario to the rest of the care workforce in terms of the number of vacancies that are being carried and being able to actually ensure that staff are well and in work at present. So the short answer, Councillor Thomas, is that the day services are open, all of them across the learning disabilities, our physical disabilities and our older persons. They are fully operational, but still operating on a slightly reduced number. But looking as we do those to revisit our risk assessments to encourage and increase those numbers as it is safe to do so. And I mean that safety not necessarily in relation to COVID, but in terms of the staff that we have in order to be able to appropriately support individuals. What I would also, and you'll be familiar with this, Councillor Charles and Councillor Thomas, from previous discussions, is that it doesn't replace that hands-on support that is in place in day services, but we have introduced additional support through other means, such as our Innovate Trust colleagues supported us to have the virtual, I'm trying to think of what we were, the programme of activities to engage individuals in virtual means and to connect people. Now, I know that would not provide the level of respite that our day services might support, or the level of social interaction, you can't replace it. But they're just to reassure members that that there are things that are available, and we have done additional support work actually going into people's homes has continued to happen as well.
Yeah, can I just come back, because there's presumably that the Innovate Trust stuff that includes our VBox type V plus contacts with the alarm systems and all the rest of it that we have. Has that now been upgraded to include more interactive?
So there's two different parts, Councillor Thomas. So the Innovate Trust is more the activities and being able to support individuals to access things that connect individuals in a more of a social interaction, or to stimulate them and then to address things around loneliness and isolation. The telecare, tele-V that you're referring to is more around our safety and ensuring that we are connected with people, that they have an opportunity that should they need support, or heaven forbid they fall, for example, that there is that opportunity to ensure that there is an alert and that we are able to support them. And I will take advantage of also flagging that we have been able to develop the false response service also during the time that since the last report, and that will be coming to you in due course around an update around telecare services.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Suzanne. Any other questions, or can we move on? No other questions? Thank you very much. Right, going on to agenda item 7. As I say, after the last report, this report is about what has been done over the last 12 months. It's a good news story, I think, and it's nice to see there's no slippage. And I think, Becky, you're going to speak on this?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, Becky, just before you continue, if you don't mind, Chair, can I just confirm for the sake of the recording that the committee are happy to go with the recommendations as per the report on the last item?
Everybody happy with the recommendations on the last item? Do you need them read out again, or are you okay? Yeah.
May I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Becky.
Okay, so, yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, so my name's Becky Wickett and I lead the Family Information Service team. We're based in the Resource Management and Safeguarding Division in Social Services, and we're a small team. But the purpose of today is to update you on the performance of the Family Information Service over the last year, how we've emerged from the pandemic, and then throughout really showing our vital role in contributing to the information, advice and assistance requirement of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. So our Family Information Service is basically a one-stop information shop for parents and carers, professionals working with families, childcare providers and other services, service providers for children and young people in the Vale. We provide information on what matters to families, including childcare options, help with childcare costs, information on various schemes for families and children, activities and groups, and family support services. What I thought I would do is throughout the pandemic, we've been looking at our digital information and digital marketing, and we commissioned a few animations. So I thought it would be good to actually show you our animation about our service, because it kind of helps explain it a bit better than probably I could. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Okay, but it's saying I can't actually share sound. Is there any way that I can?
Is that on your end, do you know, Becky, or is it saying it's within Teams? Or
it's coming up. Maybe it's in the settings. Okay, doesn't matter. I won't show the animation, but perhaps it could go out with the minutes.
Yeah, if you've got a link, Becky, maybe you could put the link in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. It's all in the annual report. So in the FIS annual report, there's a link to those animations. I just thought it would be nice to show you, but that's fine. Yeah, so over the last year, our service looks very different now than it did last year during the actual pandemic. but it's kind of resembling more of our normal service. So over the last year, we've received over 1,500 inquiries, which is actually a reduction from the previous year. The previous year, we took all of the applications for childcare for key workers and processed those applications and sourced childcare. So it was very different. But going back to our more sort of normal service, yeah, we've had over 1,500 inquiries, and that's for various things. Like I said, parents looking for childcare. We get lots of inquiries on the childcare offer, funding for 3 and 4 year olds. So I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So the childcare offer funding, which is Welsh Government funding for working parents. So when their children are 3 or 4, they can have funding towards their childcare. Over the last year, is almost 1,000 children have actually accessed the childcare offer funding. So within our team, we receive the funding to administer the childcare offer, promote it to parents, and make sure they know about what's available to them. We also receive funding from Families First to administer the index. So this is like a register of children and young people with disabilities and additional needs in the Vale. It's completely voluntary to sign up, but once they're signed up, they will receive regular newsletters and e-bulletins about what's going on in the Vale for children and people with disabilities, services and support, activities and schemes, and so on. So over the last year, our registrations to the index have more than doubled from the previous year. There's now about 900 children signed up to the index, so they're receiving regular information on what's available to them. We also, as part of the service, support childcare providers, so keeping them informed on what's available to them, updates, so things like funding through the local authority, any training, also changes to legislation, and through our service, we maintain that database of all childcare and services for children and young people. So it's about keeping their information up to date and making sure that we can promote their service then to parents that are looking for childcare and services. So over this last year, as things have kind of gone back to normal for the childcare sector, there's still been so much going on. So it's been keeping them informed about changes for things like wearing face coverings in childcare settings, the testing for under 5s, self-isolation. There's been various grants for childcare settings. They've all had to stay open, whereas there's been periods where schools have shut, childcare settings have all stayed open. It's been very difficult time for them. So our role is to keep them updated with information, provide support, work closely with our childcare team to make sure that we're all working together. There's also a childcare sufficiency assessment that's been carried out that we've been heavily involved in, and that looks at the sufficiency of childcare in the Vale and includes an action plan going forward for the next 5 years, and it's just been drafted, so it will be coming out for consultation. So just looking at some of our key achievements over the last year, I have mentioned a few, but we've been working closely with the Healthy Living team. I know Dave Nevitt mentioned the Summer of Fun and the Winter of Wellbeing, the funding that came through from Welsh Government. So what we did was actually collate the information on all of those free activities for children and young people, provide an online holiday programme and really promote that to families in the Vale. We've got an email system and we've got a really active social media page, and we worked with our corporate comms. So for those Summer of Fun and Winter of Wellbeing programs, our web views, we received over 18,000 views to that web page, and we will now be working with the sports and play team, because there's also Summer of Fun now funding, and the programme will be going live by the end of June. So we're working closely with them. Something else, our index officer, so the index, just to say, remind you, is the index for children with disabilities and additional needs, has been working closely with our team, the additional learning needs team, with the implementation of the new ALN code. What we've tried to do is really get that information across to parents in a clear way. So she organised a recorded Q&A video with various educational professionals to actually discuss the implementation and ask various questions. And then that's also gone out via various media channels and to families on the index. and we're going to carry on doing that. So that was a really good piece of work. And also we've been able to increase our outreach as well in the community. So a lot of what we do is about making sure families are aware of our service and then aware of the information and services that they're entitled to know about. So we've restarted our clinics in Llandoch Children's Centre. So we work closely with the Families First advice line and attend those clinics to be able to engage with parents that are obviously attending with their children. We've been going out to a lot of the holiday activities that the sports and play team put on to engage with parents. And we're now, as the schools are opening up, they have nursery and primary intake sessions for new children starting. So we can actually go along to those sessions and talk to the parents and let them know what we're about and the information they can access from us. So just lastly, just going forward then, some of the key actions that we will be looking at over the next year. So with the childcare offer funding, which is childcare funding for 3 and 4-year-olds for working parents, it's actually expanding and it's going to include parents that are in education and training. So we'll be promoting that widely. That's going to be coming in September. And it's also available, the funding is available to parents on adoption leave. So again, it's making sure that we're promoting that widely. There's also a new national digital system for the Welsh Government childcare offer. So that's being rolled out this summer. So we'll be working with the childcare providers to get them onto the new system this summer. And also then parents will apply to the new system from the autumn. As I've mentioned, the childcare sufficiency assessment will be coming out. In that action plan, there'll be a lot of actions for us. One of which is making sure that we're working with employability partners to make sure we're providing information on help with childcare costs and various schemes to encourage parents back into work and training. So there's lots of ways that we're looking at making sure that we get that information out to parents and carers. And also, emerging from the pandemic, it's monitoring the childcare sector. There are still a couple of after school clubs that haven't reopened. So it's monitoring that picture of childcare and also the inquiries we receive from parents and if there are gaps from parents struggling to find childcare. Working with our childcare colleagues to really try and promote childminding as a career option. The number of new childminders coming through has really reduced over the last few years. So so working with our childcare colleagues and also with the expansion of the Flying Start scheme, where all 2-year-olds will have a certain element of free childcare. So we'll be working with our colleagues in Flying Start to support that as well. So there's some of the main things that we'll be looking at over the next year. And I think that's it from me. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to raise?
Thank you very much, Becky. A very nice, as I said, a good news report. Well done. And I'm sure there's going to be an awful lot of people that are going to appreciate what you're doing. We have a couple of questions. Helen?
Sorry, my hand's not raising, so I thought I'd raise my actual hand.
Oh, it is it?
Thank you for that, Becky. I have nothing but good things to say about Family Information Service, having used it in the past. The only thing I wondered was coming out of the pandemic, there are a lot of things around social media and there are lots of groups and there were lots of support groups that were set up. So I wondered, have you made any connections there in terms of that? Because I know there is a very large, with 1,200 participants on it, and it's a different ability support group in the Vale. And that is around people, children with learning disabilities and who are on the autistic spectrum. Those are some of the issues that have come up on it. I'm on it. So I wondered if you made any inroads in the third sector, because there was kind of a new third sector, unofficial third sector that emerged out of the pandemic, really. I just wondered if you'd thought about that approach as well.
Yeah, so as part of our index, we're really keen to make sure that we know about obviously what other services are going on. And we do work closely with the different ability support group that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So anyone new signing up to the index, we make sure that send them the link and they know about the group. We've met with the Ellie, the actual coordinator. Yeah. So there's things that we've done through the index that she's actually helped promote for us as well. But yes, as well as that group, it's other organisations like, Cardiff and Vale Parents Federation, the intersensory group. All of the information that we have on the services we update on the Dewis Cymru website, the online directory. So it's really important to us to make sure that that gets updated as the go-to place really for us and for parents and carers. But with the index, we do regular newsletters. There'll be one coming out beginning of July now, and there'll be lots of information on the various services and especially what's going on in the summer holidays. So yeah, there's always probably new services as well. So really, you know, anything, any new services is good for us to know about. So, but yeah, just to give you a bit of an insight that, yeah, we're always trying to work with third sector organisations. Yeah, thanks.
Lovely.
Does that answer your question, Helen? Yep. Thank you, Becky. Susan?
Yeah, thank you. And again, Becky, thank you for providing such a comprehensive report and running through it so clearly for us this evening. So one of the recommendations before us tonight is that we consider the impact of the pandemic on the service. And you've talked about increased demand, and through the pandemic, despite that, you've been able to respond to that in a very positive way, which is really great to hear when times are so challenging. So is there anything specific that you want to highlight for us to think about either tonight or going forward in terms of any impact that you anticipate you might still be seeing in the service?
We've received some funding to recruit 2 new members of staff. So to support the index through Families First funding, we'll be recruiting a part-time support assistant. And then through the expansion of the childcare offer, because that demand is going to increase with the expansion of the offer, from Welsh Government, we've received funding again for a part-time support worker. So that's really encouraging for us. I think the struggles are more so with the childcare sector themselves. So it's more about the day nurseries really struggling with staff. I mean, I suppose it's across the board. The childminders aren't coming through as a career option. So we're going to be working with other colleagues to really look at how we promote that and how we target it and use our information to support that. So I think it's more so just about highlighting that they are struggling. And we're going to do what we can to support them and our colleagues more so than our actual service itself. Is that okay?
Thank you, Becky. Thank you very much. We look forward to more updates in the future from you.
Thanks.
Moving on to agenda item 8, which is the 4th quarter scrutiny recommendation tracking from 21 to 22 and proposed annual forward work programme schedule 22 to 23. If there's anything left out, we can work on it after the future schedule. So Amy, would you like to take us through this, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just confirm for the sake of the recording that the committee are happy to go with the recommendations as per the last report, please?
Move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And can I take it as seconded by Councillor Lloyd Selby? Because I can see her nodding. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much. So the report that's before you this evening, members, is a rolling report. So many members of the committee are new following the recent election. So I just wanted to very quickly take you through the structure of the report. We won't have to do this every time because, as I mentioned, it does come to the committee on a quarterly basis. So it will become very familiar as we go through the forward work programme for the committee. So in front, if hopefully members are able to see the papers at the moment. So the covering report that you have there is very much an overview report. It's basically advising that the committee obviously makes recommendations at each meeting. And this is the process for tracking that those recommendations have gone to their full fruition. And also then the second part of it is about the forward work programme, as I'm sure you appreciate is a constant moving, fluctuating document of the content that comes to the committee and makes the agendas. Obviously, this report is property of you as a committee. The forward work programme is yours. It's yours for you to amend in consultation with the officers as you see fit. And that's why it's brought to you on a regular basis, and it was normally presented by the chair of the committee. However, because this is our first meeting since the new administration, I thought it would be useful for myself to take you through it this once for your benefit. So there are 4 appendices in the report. Obviously, Appendix A and Appendix B are relating to the content of the committee and progress of the committee in the previous administration. Appendix C then is the annual forward work programme for the Vale of Glamorgan's Cabinet, which as I'm sure you appreciate, the Cabinet have an annual forward work programme, and the Cabinet will then make recommendations for items to come to scrutiny committees, and therefore this scrutiny committee's forward work programme needs to reflect the work that's proposed from the Cabinet annual forward work programme, and that's why that's included for you this evening. And then the final appendix, Appendix D, is the forward work programme schedule for this committee, looking forward now over the next municipal year from this meeting right through to April and May next year. So the recommendations before the committee this evening are to agree the status of the actions listed in Appendix A and Appendix B. And you will see from those appendices that the majority of the actions, or the vast majority of the actions, are marked as completed. We don't have any recommendations that the progress of those are outstanding, I'm pleased to say. There is one item that is ongoing, but that's simply because a recommendation was made to go to the Governance and Audit Committee, and that committee hasn't sat before this evening. So in terms of recommendations, the committee is in a good position, and most of them are marked as completed. So I'm simply asking your permission to confirm that that is the case. The second recommendation then is obviously asking the committee to note the Cabinet annual forward work programme and its impact on the committee's forward work programme. And therefore Appendix D, which is your third recommendation, does include any items from the Cabinet forward work programme already. I've already included those for you, and then obviously it includes the items from the Social Care Directorate, from Lance, and also from the Leisure Services section from Dave, as well as performance monitoring, finance, and then rolling tracking reports like the one I'm talking you through this evening. I would like to have the committee's permission, if possible, to publish that forward work programme as it is this evening. That is for the benefit of the public, to ensure that the public are aware of the work that is coming before the committee, and therefore what the objectives of this committee is going forward into the future. As I mentioned at the top of my presentation, the forward work programme is a fluctuating, constantly changing document based on conversations that happen between Cabinet members and the committee chair, and also key information that officers feel needs to be brought before the committee. So I would be publishing as seen tonight, but as I'm sure you appreciate, that will constantly then be updated over the coming weeks before you see the next quarterly version of the report. Paragraph 1.3 of the report is some key performance statistics for the Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee for the previous municipal year. I've included that this time round, which I thought it might be of interest to both returning and new members to the committee. And as I mentioned earlier, there's very little slippage for this committee. We do have fantastic officers involved in this committee who are very effective in terms of bringing reports when required, and therefore we don't have any reports that we didn't receive in the last municipal year that have followed on into this municipal year. So we're starting from a very good position for the committee. So that concludes my presentation, Chair, in terms of this report.
Thank you, Amy. Can I ask if everybody's happy with the three reported recommendations and for Amy to publish? Yeah, no assent.
I think Lance wants to come in.
Lance.
Yeah, I was hoping I could ask about the Integrated Family Support Service annual update. I know I discussed it with you, Councillor Charles, at Agenda Conference, but this is a report that has traditionally come annually, and I think the last time we brought it a year ago, we took out that it will come annually request in the recommendations, but we didn't explicitly say it shouldn't come annually. And I think I was hoping that my omission of that was sufficient, but I don't think it is in terms of tidying it up. And I suppose my reasons for suggesting that it shouldn't come are that it feels disproportionate really to focus in on one particular team. And I think it had come traditionally because it was grant funded and it was set up in that way, and so it needed to be monitored. And whilst that grant funding now comes in through a much broader grant and it covers about 7 or 8 different services, so to me it no longer feels appropriate. And I think some of what I guess some of the work that we've done as a committee jointly together has talked really about the need to be responsive to emergent issues, such as the report that you had earlier about adult care commissioning. And you'll notice with that report, I put that it needed to come annually, because I think until we've resolved this and we know where it's at, you should continue to have those kinds of reports. And I suppose we can only be that dynamic if we've got rid of the reports that we don't need so much of. And so I was hoping that in that context that the committee would be happy to remove that one from the requirements going forward. But I appreciate probably Councillor Thomas and Councillor Charles will be aware of what that report contained previously, and probably in perfect position to comment if they did want us to do it. I'm just conscious we have a crammed schedule, and if we add too many reports, it then becomes difficult to achieve them all and provide the relevant level of scrutiny.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's necessary. How about you, Neil?
No, I think you're probably right. I mean, one of the things that we were faced with last year, I think, was the report from the audit committee, from the Wales audit committee. People that were saying that we're unusual in that we have so many agenda items per meeting. I mean, some councils, I understand, have single item agenda meetings, and we're unusual in that across the piece. But that we should consider whether there are reports that we don't need to see that often, or maybe need to see when issues come up. So they can still be brought back to us if there is an issue that we need to consider. We don't need to sit here and listen to. I mean, as interesting as they are, and as good as they usually are, they aren't. We aren't actually contributing anything to their report by listening to them, merely sort of appreciating the hard work they're doing. So yes, certainly on this one, and we need to consider whether there are any others that maybe we were having trouble identifying any that we didn't need to bring, as I recall, but whether anybody can identify any that you think the other committee members think maybe are less relevant now, then we can take them off forward work programme as well, because we do an awful lot, as you can see from paragraph 1.3. Thank you very much.
Are the rest of the committee in agreements with taking out those that we don't need? Yep, no ascension. That's good. Thank you very much. And as I say, we can always add things to the agenda. If there's something in particular you want to hear, or somebody you'd like to invite along to speak, then please let us know. And thank you, Amy.
If the committee's happy, I'll obviously just alter the recommendation slightly to say that the forward work programme to be published subject to the Families First report being removed. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you.
Very much.
Well, thank you all very much for your attendance. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope you've got time to sit and relax. You're not going to be too busy. and see you all next time. Thank you very much.
If I may, Chair, as well, just to mention very quickly, because we do mention this periodically for members, and considering we do have a few new members on the committee now, just to mention that obviously there is the Cabinet call-in procedure and the request for consideration procedure for scrutiny committees as well, which are two processes open to members of the scrutiny committee. I would recommend that new members familiarise themselves with that process should they wish to take advantage of those processes, but also they can approach myself at any time and I can offer some advice on that if they're thinking of engaging with those processes. But just to remind you that those two processes, the call-in and request for consideration processes, are available to members should they wish.
Thank you very much. Well, I have no urgent items. There's no part 2 as well. So good night, God bless, and see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Chair.
all.
Night, night. Sue, can you stay on the